and North Dakota very attractive to businesses as they think about expanding. I think actually, at the end of the day, cutting education undermines the health of our state. It undermines the economic prosperity of our state, and it undermines the future of our state. And cutting education right now, especially during a pandemic when families are stretched, kids are out of school, we need the resources to make up that difference and to make up the gap that they've experienced. And with that, I'll pass it on to the next speaker. Thanks so much for the opportunity to speak. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sabina, and you are right on. Okay, our next speaker is Hailie Hillford. Hailie?
Hi, can you hear me?
We can, yep. Loud and clear.
Good. I was worried my microphone wouldn't work. Hi, everyone. My name is Hailie. Hailie Hillford. I'm calling from the Central Grasslands Research Extension Center in Streator, North Dakota. I'm a master's student at NDSU, so I'm just starting my first semester this fall, but I'm doing some data collection right now. A little bit of background about myself is I graduated a couple years ago and started a career in natural resources, specifically in prescribed fire in Western Minnesota. And when I started looking for jobs in my field, I realized I needed higher education to move up in my career. And moving up in this career field is really important because it's a male-dominated career field. And so access to higher education like this is super important for my life and my career as a woman. But I would also say that the research going on here at Streator is really exciting, both for the economy of North Dakota and for the ecosystems in North Dakota, because we research out here both how we can create really healthy ecosystems that also provide greater benefit to people's cattle, which is a really important aspect of the economy in North Dakota. So, and also I would say that our natural resources are like people come here to see the prairie, to be in the open space. So I think that kind of research is really important. And without any funding, if funding was cut for this, we wouldn't be able to do research out here. There wouldn't be people, there wouldn't be a station, and we wouldn't have that research to move forward so that we can maybe further our economy and our natural resources. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. So I will pass it on to the next speaker.
All right, Hailie, you said a lot and you're spot on. Our next speaker is Adam Goldwyn. Adam?
Hi, thank you. And thank you for running to represent our state, to be the governor of our state. I came to North Dakota about 6 years ago. I'm a professor of English at North Dakota State University. I came from New York, sight unseen to North Dakota. And I think one of the things that I find most inspiring about being a professor here is the work that we do as a land-grant institution, not just for our students, but the way that our work actually filters out throughout the state. So one of the main things that we do in my department is of English is teacher training. So a large number of the K through 12 teachers that are in the classrooms all over North Dakota are trained in the English department at NDSU. And so I always sort of like to think that we're not just sort of affecting what's happening with our students in the classroom when they're in the classroom, but the way that every decision that we make, who we are, how we model, what it's like to be a good teacher, all of those things are benefiting, the next generation of North Dakotans. And so when I think about budget cuts for higher ed, especially at a difficult time like this, I think we as professors might be able to manage somehow, but the consequences of budget cuts are not really so much for me as a professor. Where you'll really see them is 5 or 10 years down the line when our students graduate and now they're in the second grade teacher and you're in Cannonball or Rolla or any of the small towns all over North Dakota. And so for me, that's a really important part of our value system. And for me, it's part of a personal mission to sort of bring the highest quality education to everyone. And so, I admire what you're doing, and I know you'll be a good advocate for higher education, which, as I've been trying to say, is really education at all levels for our state. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for putting in that perspective, Adam. Sometimes we don't realize how the higher ed really affects all ed. So, okay, our next speaker is Burchett Kruis. Burchett?
Oh, maybe you can you hear me now?
We can, yeah, there we go.
Good, I'm glad I figured it out this first attempt.
Got it.
Okay, I'm a faculty at NDSU also in microbiology, and I used to be the faculty member on the State Board of Higher Education, but that is past history now. And as a disclaimer, I'm talking as a private person, albeit with a good amount of knowledge of the higher ed system in the state. And also as a microbiologist, which is really an interesting time right now, given the COVID situation. We cannot have another budget cut. We got one 3 years ago. The outcome of that was bloody, really. We lost a lot of real good faculty. I personally lost, I think, 4 collaborators, which put a damper on much of my research projects. Many of our faculty have to teach more. At the same time, if you are limited with research, it's harder to get grants. You have smaller number of opportunities for students to participate in research, which is an essential part of their education. Also, many of us are doing research that is actually important in the state and addresses critical needs of the state, in addition to the workforce development that we are doing by providing graduates. So what I'm still seeing right now is that people are coming here, they are excited, and then it takes 5, 6, 7 years, often after tenure, and they notice, Naya, well, maybe the situation here isn't that great right now, and there are greener pastures elsewhere, when other institutions are really poaching away our good faculty. So I do not think this can continue. Now, having been on the State Board of Higher Education 2 years ago, when the governor said 10%, he didn't get what he wanted then. And part of the reason was that the SBHE was really pushing against it.
Okay.
And I have the feeling that they are doing that again.
Good.
I'm not sure, I'm not part of the team anymore, but my understanding is that they provided a needs-based budget again, which is like 1.6% on top of last year, and has 3% faculty raises and employee raises. So I think we need to push for this. So, I mean, it's, if you're a governor, I think it may actually be easier.
Yeah.
If not, we will still have to push.
Yeah, it's a priority. It's a cornerstone, like as everybody's of everything here. It's a cornerstone.
We are in a downhill slide right now. There's no way around that. I mean, things are still working, kind of, but we were striving.
You guys are fantastic. That's why. You guys have all stepped up.
I mean,
yes.
we are all doing what we can, and we are dedicated to the system.
Right.
But how long can you swim without any support?
Exactly.
And we want to strive, not just survive. And we want to help the state and benefit the state and drive the state forward. We used to be a major engine for the economy, and I'm not sure we are that anymore, though I don't honestly know. I just suspect that's what it is. So I do appreciate your efforts. I appreciate you are listening, and good luck. So
thank you. We'll make it. We'll make it. Okay. Our next speaker is Lydia Tackett.
Hi, everybody. I'm a geoscientist at North Dakota State University. I have a research lab where we do all kinds of interesting projects with fossils and sediments to understand Earth history. One of the things I've been most proud about with being at NDSU for the last 6 years has been my work with dozens of undergraduate students on research projects that we collaborate on together, collect samples together in the field, and present those results at national conferences. The students are able to present those results at conferences. And all of these things are really beneficial to getting these students into high-paying jobs after they graduate, building up their resumes, giving them experiences. And that's one of the most important things I think that we can do as faculty at these research universities. But none of those activities are free. Almost all the students that I've come into contact with at NDSU have part-time jobs. They're really responsible, hardworking students, and it's we want to be able to pay them for their time that they spend working in the lab. And I'm honored to be able to do that. Taking them into the field costs money. Sending them to conferences costs money. I've been really fortunate in the last 3 years to have received a substantial grant that allowed me to pay for these students their time, their research efforts, and to sponsor them to go to conferences. But without this grant, I wouldn't be able to do almost any of that. So I kind of view the way my lab is functioning right now as kind of an ideal state, that it'd be wonderful if we could fill our labs with students and send them to these professional development meetings, which students get good rates on. We should be able to send them to these conferences. I think we all want to do that. And when you invest in higher education, you're supporting students to get to do these kinds of things that push them into these better jobs when they graduate.
Yeah. Yep. And we have our name on those, North Dakota name on those. So, and I want to get back to you after this, our next speaker, about the grant. Thank you, Lydia. Our next speaker is Meryl Pipcorn.
Very good. Good evening, everyone.
First
of all, one of my great accomplishments as a state senator was introducing the geology magazine from the Department of Mineral Resources to geologist Lydia Tackett. So got a new reader there. And I don't know if you know this, Dr. Shelley, but there was a program, and as a veterinarian, you should be interested in this. There was a program. We have programs for, I believe it's dentists, not pharmacists, some other profession, where we assist students who go to
ophthalmologists. Yeah.
Veterinarians,
ophthalmologists, and
who have to go to school out of state, and we had that. We had something in place for veterinarians, and I've been in the Ag Committee or Human Services. In the 17th session, we were able to save that program in 19. Now, my colleague sitting directly behind me said it was an unwise decision for me to vote against the entire higher ed budget as a protest against them eliminating that program for veterinarians, but I thought it was important. So I did join my Democratic colleague, Democrat NPL colleague, Jim Dotzenrod from Wyoming, and Republican Senator Robert Erbely from the Wishick-Lair area in voting no. So we'll see if that comes back to bite me during this election. But it just goes to show you that cuts like that are not necessary. And what I really, if I had the keys to the vault, also last session, I believe NDSU and UN request for $50 million for each school for research, $100 million altogether. They kind of teamed up on this. Well, it was cut. I believe we passed something to the tune of $25 million per. If it was if I had the keys, I'd unlock the vault and double it. It's in times like this. And Shelley, you've talked about, here we in North Dakota, whether it be farmers, just ordinary people, working folks, our backs are against the wall in many respects when it comes to the economy, our lifestyle. And this is the time to double down. In my mind, this is the time to double down on research, double down on the future. We're dealing with a lot of things that are in the past or fading, that people are reluctant to let go of. And so I maybe there's still a chance to do something like this, just to invest in the future. In tough times, I think that's what we need to do, rather than draw back, gotta her down. So I think everything is there if we So that's all I got for you tonight. Thank you for letting me share those.
Yeah. And Meryl, I'm really glad you brought that up, because I just want to point out that legislative act taking veterinarians off of the budget happened at the midnight hour on the last day of, almost the last day of the session.
Right.
I called my senator, Rich Warner, who's a Republican majority senator. He asked for the veterinarians to be removed from that piece. Put veterinarians, let's support the veterinarians here. And it was voted down again. So we went to the governor and asked for a line item veto for those veterinarians, which he could have done, and he refused. That's how he feels about higher ed. That's how he feels about veterinarians. And we know veterinarians are critical for our food security. And anyway, I'm getting all riled up. Sorry. But that. I mean, all he had to do was one line item. Nobody was the Senator Majority Leader said, please do it. He put it on the bill. Then, oh, okay. So before our next speaker, who is Pat Hart, I just want to announce that he is the last pre-signed speaker, and that people can raise their hands or post in the chat to be called upon. So with that, Pat.
Well, first off, thanks, Dr. Shelley, for putting not only this, but also the other listening sessions together. I think listening is vital to understand what our constituents are feeling and also to hear their concerns. Now, for those of you that maybe haven't met yet, I am Patrick Hart, and I'm running for North Dakota State Auditor. I'm running against waste, fraud, and abuse, just like the recent legislative discussion of the NDSU land swaps for the benefit primarily of those directly surrounding high-ranking legislatures. Higher education has been a heavy discussion in the recent year's budget conversation and will continue to be during this next 2020 legislative session. Higher education, in my opinion, is vital to the continued success of our communities and our state. I hold a master's in project management and an undergraduate degree in business administration. With this background, I'm an entrepreneur and a job creator, much like you, Dr. Shelley. I want educated employees who are competent and able to help me build Bismarck. We need to support our state by keeping our talented young adults here by offering degree fields that will bolster their careers, as they will have a background entering industry. I've seen too many of my college friends leaving the state to pursue postgraduate degree fields. Now more than ever, we need to double down on our future and our state's future by continuing to invest in our universities and our upcoming generation. Open to questions. Otherwise, Dr. Shelley, I'll throw it back to you.
Thank you, Pat. We'll have questions after after we're done with the speakers here. We had somebody raise their hand, Mr. Tom DeVilbus.
Hey, where's my unmute button? There it is. Thank you very much, Dr. Shelley. I have had conversations in the past with some of our local legislatures, and I'm concerned about the two-year college up in Bottineau, amongst others. One of the things I'd like to point out is the two-year system is very critical for some of our other goals as far as the DMNPL platform, especially the new jobs type programs. I really encourage you to get involved with the two-year colleges. And I thank you for the opportunity of hearing us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. And I think that is important to point out. This affects our two-year colleges as well, a whole strata of workforce. Okay, so now I'm going to open the floor for questions. And you can raise your hand, put something in the chat, or I think my campaign manager has a list of questions that was sent to her. And she'll type those to me. Or how did you want to do that, Melissa? You said you had
looks like
questions.
Sabina has raised her hand, and then Burchett as well. And I will pull up my list of questions if you want to call on Sabina again.
Okay, Sabina.
Hi, I just wanted to follow up. I can't remember. I think it was Meryl Pipcorn and Pat Hart that noted that one of Burgum's strategies over the years seems to have been reducing education kind of by steps. And I remember him saying that at one point, really all kids need is a laptop and they can be educated online. And I think that's something we have to keep really firmly in our minds, that this is not a short-term strategy on his part. This is a longer-term strategy. And what my concern is that the COVID pandemic has kind of proved to him that, you know, kids can do remote learning. But watching my kids go through this, yeah, they can learn, you know, they can read a chapter and maybe answer a few questions, but they're losing socialization. They're losing that group conversation that generates real thinking and real abstract thinking. They're losing the access to mentors like teachers and coaches and other folks in the school who actually provide examples of role models and support throughout their educational career. And I think most importantly in education is the arts, and they're losing band. They're losing that hands-on learning that is so critical to success later in life. So I think as we move forward in this discussion and you move forward in your candidacy, I think we really have to keep in mind that, you know, Burgum is a tech guy and he firmly believes that all you need is a laptop and a table and you're good to go. And I think we need to make sure that that just does not happen.
Right.
Okay, rant over.
No, it's not a rant. And this is why I wanted to have you guys speak, because you guys, the educators, this is your career, this is your job, this is what you're good at. You know that education is more than what happens on a computer screen. You know, yeah. what you guys were able to pull together, like I was saying the other day, you did that under crisis mode. That's fine. You did it because you're great. We are not going to be in a crisis forever, and we shouldn't be. And we shouldn't ask that of you. Okay, so one of the questions, one of the questions I'd like to hear from anyone on this call about, has anyone from the Burgum administration visited with anyone in your institution about how these cuts would negatively affect the institution? I would just be interested, has Burgum reached out to you about these cuts, either before or after he proposed his incredible cuts?
He hasn't. Can I talk?
Yes.
He hasn't reached out to me and I haven't reached out to him, but 2 years ago, when Robbie Love was his policy advisor, he did visit me in my office at NDSU between Christmas and New Year. And we had an hour and a half of chatting on the state budget, on how everything works. So back then there was at least an opportunity to talk to a policy advisor, if not the governor himself. And I do know who the policy advisor is now, but I don't know him as well as Robbie. Robbie was student body president at NDSU when I was faculty senate president. So I knew him from that time and there was a connection. I think if we would really make the point to reach out, there might be a possibility to get to talk to somebody. But any other than that, I mean, I'm a microbiologist. I fought like hell to get onto the NDSU COVID committee to make a difference. And everybody tried to keep me from doing that. Whether as a faculty or as a microbiologist, or because for being unusually noisy, I don't know. But it is generally difficult to have a voice here in the state.
Okay. Thank you, Burchett. Yeah, that's what I hear frequently. So it's good that we're hearing it publicly from somebody that's on the inside. Let's call on Clara next. Clara, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, my name is Clara. I am the fundraising coordinator for Dr. Shelley Lens, and I am also a student at Minnesota State University Moorhead, which I know is not part of North Dakota. I'm part of the problem. But I live in Fargo and I grew up in Bismarck and I'm a North Dakotan through and through. This past fall, I had the incredible privilege of doing a study abroad in Norway. And so now I have friends all across Norway and the rest of Europe. And it was so interesting to me to hear and learn about other countries' approaches to education. And it really was a paradigm shift for me as I started to question some of what I thought was just the reality of getting an education, namely like the high cost of it all. I go to a relatively inexpensive school, but it is not uncommon for people to be spending $100,000 on an undergraduate degree. But in Germany, for example, they spend 200 euros as a semester fee per year, and that's it. And that just blew my mind that the state has an obligation both to its current citizens, but also its future, to continuously be investing in its people. Because to invest in the people is to invest in the economy, which is to invest in its survival. And in this time of crisis of COVID-19 and everything else, I just see over and over and over again different institutions being questioned and paradigm shifts starting to happen. And so as now North Dakota higher education is coming up on another threat, I really hope everyone can take the opportunity to think about what can we do right now in the short term about how do we make sure that this 10% budget cut doesn't go through, but long term, how can we start to really evaluate and adjust our higher education system to be competitive and reflective of what really the rest of the world is doing. So thank you, Dr. Lens, for the opportunity.
Yeah, no, great insight. Yeah, that comparative approach and everything. Thank you. And is Hal Haynes on the call? Hal Haynes, he had signed up, but we haven't seen to speak. Okay, just let us know if you are. So one of the questions, oh wait, I'm sorry. This is the other question is, okay. One of the questions is, what ways can you see saving money in higher ed that have not been explored yet? For all the you on the inside, is there some way to save money that has not been explored yet?
I would say we've been through 2 rounds of budget cuts in 5 years. Everything that can be cut has been cut. You know, and wherever you might imagine that waste might be, with like, I don't know, administrator salaries or, or something like that. They've merged departments. A lot of people have been laid off. And unfortunately, some of the times what happens with these budget cuts is they lay off teaching staff, staff who's, their specific job is to teach courses. And that teaching, that usually sometimes means courses get canceled. Teaching responsibilities are piled up amongst all the remaining faculty, which takes time away from, research, mentorship, all the things that we really like to do, in addition to teaching, of course. But at the moment, I know that this most recent budget cut was extremely painful because it was almost impossible to imagine where we could come up with more money for the cut.
Yeah, thank you for that, Lydia. It's kind of, somebody used the analogy once of like a wrestler trying to cut weight, and they've cut all the fat they can, and now they're just going to have to dehydrate themselves and really harm themselves to make that match. So you're quite anemic right now. Is there somebody raising their hand to that? Okay, Gina Van Horn. You have a statement to make on that?
Oh, no, not on that. Just to speak whenever she's done.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So for myself, when I heard about, budgets to higher education, I don't think I understood how far that reached. It's not just colleges, like it's small rural schools too. I am I was an operatic singer. I have 7 years of classical voice lessons, and I started in high school. I was able to go to Bismarck State College and learn from this amazing woman. She's so amazing. Anyway, but if if we have these budget cuts, it scares me that no one else will ever have that experience or even know that that opportunity is out there. And for especially high school kids, they need that. It's not just about the education either. It's, you know, when you cut the arts, you cut kids' ability to deal with their emotions. Art and music is an outlet, and if we cut these programs, I don't know how they're going to get those emotions out in a healthy way.
Right.
And that disturbs me greatly. That's my statement. Thank you so much for doing.
And that's a really important point. And I was so shocked. This is me being, because, you know, I know Jenna is a rancher. She's a hardcore rancher, you know, and for her to say she's an operatic singer, I'm like, what? So it's a really important part of even on our small towns' lives that. So thank you, Jenna.
Yeah, I can honestly say that changed my life, and it bothers me. It bothers me a lot to know that other people might not have that experience.
Yeah. Okay. So then now, Clara, one more time.
Yeah,
Clara.
Circling back to some of the ways that we're seeing higher ed institutions trying to cut their budget and do those cost-saving things. My university just had its budget cut coming from the Minnesota State Legislature. And again, in times of crisis, as we're seeing at my university and more broadly as a society, like when people are put under pressure, some of their not so savory qualities come out. And so with these recent budget cuts, a lot of what was done to make up for that was faculty and staff layoffs. And what ended up happening, and something that we don't really have answers on why it's happening, is that 80% of our faculty of color are being laid off within the next 3 years. And so as terrible as a 10% budget cut is for an entire university, those cuts are going to affect the most marginalized the hardest. And it's really disappointing to see these people being left, because they're what make our university so amazing. And it's so important for our students of color and our international students to see that representation. And I can just go on and on and on about why diversity and representation, especially in education, matters so much. And so that will be a huge loss if these budget cuts go through.
That's a good point. Another interconnectedness that, you know, unintended consequences of when they're trying to save a dollar. So like they're penny smart, but dollar stupid. But anyway, sorry. Ben, I would like to, Ben is next. Ben is, as you know, our next Lieutenant Governor. And Ben, why don't we?
Hey guys. Well, yeah, thank you, Dr. Shelley, and thank you to everybody for tuning in today. This has been a good conversation with everybody. Yeah, I was going to chime in a little bit too. We got at North Dakota State, we got, I think, 7 research centers around the state that do research on crops and livestock, and you know, so budget cuts are certainly hit home when it comes to agriculture. I got my daughter here too today, so I'm just hanging out with daddy time. So with the extension service, that's something that near and dear to so many people around the state, because I think we got extension agents in, I think it's in 51 counties. So, and then also we got that greenhouse in Fargo. I think the greenhouse is 11 years old, and we do some pretty amazing research there for crops. So doing research on rust and mold and on so many different crops, and so that's something that near and dear to so many people. So I wanted to chime in on that as well. So.
And I'm just going to add that you talk about the mold. Do you guys know that warfarin, one of the biggest drugs ever found for, which is an anticoagulant, was found right here in North Dakota by a veterinarian? It has to do with all that research, right? because they were in the place when they saw all the cows bleeding out for no reason at all. Well, the reason why is they were to discover warfarin. So thank you for reminding that. Before we go to Burchett, I do want to acknowledge that my father, Hans Lens, is on this call. Dad, I know this is a surprise, but there was nothing more important than how well we did in school and education. So Dad, if you would just want to say like 2 minutes about how you instilled that in us, and that's why we all became independent, actually, from my dad, which I think that's what his idea was. Dad? That's Hans down there. He might not be able to figure out his little Zoom thing.
Looks like he's off mute. We can't hear you though, Hans.
Okay, we'll let him try to figure that out. Sorry about that. Sorry that surprise, but I just saw that Dad was there, and education was one of the most important things. I think we came out of the womb starting to learn that. So Burchett has another thing to say.
Yeah, this is not budget related, but there were 2 items during the last legislative session, and I'm not sure the governor even has something to do with that, because it came clearly out of legislation. The one was guns in classroom, and many of our faculty were not all too keen on the idea of having guns in the classroom. It was in like, I don't know, 20 different bills, and it kept popping up until the night before closing.
Yeah.
And the other thing was free speech, which by first view, of course, sounds very exciting, but it did have something to do with opinions and evidences and those kinds of things. And that was a little bit scary and took quite some time also. And I don't have absolutely no clue whether you as a governor would be able to do something about it. But for me, I'm definitely going to have an eye on it.
Yeah, that comes through your legislature. The governor prioritizes things. Your lieutenant governor gets that, talks with the legislator to make that a real thing. And so talk to your legislatures all the time.
Okay.
Be noisy.
Yeah,
looks like Dad was able to make it. So just so you know, here's my dad, Hans Lens. And can you hear us? Oh, wait, you're muted, Dad. I don't know what to do there. Hold on.
He's unmuted, but he might be hooked up to the wrong audio, unfortunately. But we did have a really great Homegrown Stories episode with him. So if people want to check out Dr. Shelley's Facebook page, you can learn all about Hans and their really incredible story.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's Dad. We always have a little technical difficulty with that audio. Okay. So let's see. One more question? Is there one more question, Melissa?
Yes, 1 second. So this was more for like families and stuff, people with like college age students. So I'm gonna put it in the chat if you want to read that out loud, Dr. Shelley.
Okay. If you have college age or near college age children planning to pursue higher education, are they planning to stay in North Dakota? What state investments do you think could be made to keep our young generation in North Dakota? And just so you know, my grandpa left North Dakota in the 30s, in part because of the drought in the dirty 30s, but also because he wanted to pursue higher education that was not available there. Luckily, we came back. So does anybody have any college age or near college age children planning to pursue higher education? I don't know if there's, but I know one person here would be Ethan Haynes. Is Ethan still on the call?
I don't think he's on.
Okay.
I'm still here.
Oh, there he is.
Where are you, Ethan?
I'm not on my computer right now.
Okay, that's okay.
I'm just calling in.
Why don't you tell, Ethan is just graduated from Dickinson High School here, and You spoke a little bit on your homegrown stories about your choice to continue higher education here in North Dakota versus going somewhere else. Do you want to talk about that a little?
Yeah, well, I mean, as you said, I just graduated high school, and pretty much everyone in my family has gone to college, and so it's pretty much just been to me that I got to go to college after high school. And I found a degree I want to go into, and then even graduate school. But my worry is that with these proposed budget cuts, that it would be harder for me to afford undergrad or even graduate school in the state. So that really makes me worried that I might not be able to continue my education in North Dakota in the future and have to go to a different alternative school to cut costs.
Yes. So there you go. He is already thinking about that. So thank you, Ethan. Okay, everybody. Dad, you're still unable to mute. Can you try to speak, Dad? Yep, nope, you're still muted. I don't know what's going on. It's okay, Dad. Okay, so that brings us to the end of tonight's listening session. But this is a part of our larger effort to ensure that our government works for all of us. To do that, we need decisive leadership that will unite all North Dakotans and actually listen to the needs of the communities. As governor, I will be decisive, collaborative, transparent, and always listening. We will be preparing a summary of this session and delivering it to the governor, the legislature, and the press. Together, I believe that we can get through these challenging times to help our communities thrive. I hope I can count on your support to help bring a practical and responsive voice to the governor's office. Please visit lens-vig4nd.com to make a contribution, learn more about me and my Lieutenant Governor, Ben Vig, or to get involved. In addition, if you would like to host a listening session in your community or virtually, I would love to continue this discussion. Please contact info@lens-vig4nd.com to make those arrangements. Once again, thank you for attending, for speaking, for being engaged, for listening, for thinking about how to solve these problems together, and greatly thank you for sharing my pride in our great state. Let's keep the conversation going. Thank you.